I'm Martina Siliano from Compilatio. Specifically, I'm in charge of following all the projects starting in Italy and on the east part of Europe. We'll be here today to talk about artificial intelligence in the sector of education, which is a really important topic that starting from the beginning of this year has took place a little on all the talks in the educational sector. We will spend together the next 2 hours talking about this topic, because we know that it's really important to share the experience and the experts that will be today together with us. I think they will give a really interesting presentation and advice to the teachers and the academic staff in general, which are were together with us today. It's a really important topic, and somehow it crashed generally the word and specifically the educational part at the beginning of 2023. So we decided to give a space to this topic in order to, as I mentioned before, to give some advice. You will hear the presentation of our experts, and to look for comfort in this situation, which changes almost every day. So we will hope that you will find some really good tips, and you will be able to implement some of them in your daily work as a teacher or as any kind of function that involves the educational sector. Just a quick look of the experts that will be together with us today. Of course, yeah, they will present their point of view and the actions that they put in place on their experience. And it will be the case both from seeing something from the teacher's point of view, which is, as I mentioned before, maybe the first thoughts that we have saying artificial intelligence in education. Okay, the teacher must do something, but also on the student's point of view, because these are the two main actors involved in education. So we thought that it was really interesting to listen to something from both sides to better understand which is the scenario that we have, and to look, of course, from for some good tips and advice. It will be also the case to have together with us today the CEO of Compilatio, which for the people that maybe don't know our company, we developed an anti-plagiarism software. And through the years, we really understood that, yeah, the software is something, is just a part, but also all the educational environment, which is on the side of this tool. Also, this part, it's really important. So we really think that talking about plagiarism prevention and in general ethics and academic integrity, it's something that must be done to really install a good environment both for teachers and students to success in their academic career. And there will be also Courtney Cullen from the United States. She sent to us a video of course, of her speech. We will see at the end. So I think we are able to start. And just to break the ice a little bit, we try to involve you sometimes, asking you some questions. And the first one, just to know a little bit, which is the situation you are facing in your daily life, from the educational point of view, is if there is something already done inside of your institution talking about artificial intelligence, because we know that it's a topic which really started from the beginning the year, it really imposed itself in the educational world. So what we are seeing right now is there some institutions, some universities or schools are trying to find the right way for them to try to face this problem. So it's just to know you more a little bit, and we hope, of course, that at the end of this conference you will have some more proposition, of course, to share with your colleagues that will help you in the case that for the moment anything hasn't been done right now, that you will be able to implement some action in your institution. So we'll let the poll just a little bit more so everyone can answer, and then we will start with the first presentation of Professor Edward Palmer. Okay, I think that almost everybody answered to the poll. So yeah, just to give also to our experts a little bit of the situation that the people who are joining us are feeling and are experiencing in their daily life. Most of them, for the moment, don't have any specific actions like training modules concerning AI already implemented in their institution. So I think this conference is really good for you to have some more thoughts. I think that we can go on. Of course, if someone wants to add something more following, in this case, the poll that we share with you, or if you want also to share your experience with the audience today, there is no problem to activate your microphone. So it's just need to ask in the left menu sector, and we will be able to share, of course, your microphone for of course to ask something. I think that right now, okay. Well, Professor Palmer, it's with us today with a presentation on a multi-pronged approach to train both staff and students on the ethical use of AI and how to detect this use of this tool. Professor Palmer, I will transfer to you the session control, so you will be able to share your screen. And right now, the stage is yours.
Lovely, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the people at Compartment for inviting us along here to have this chat. I think it's very timely considering what's happening on the world at the moment. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of my co-presenters. Unfortunately, as I did declare to the organisers, it's my mum's birthday today and her birthday dinner is in about an hour's time. So I've got real intelligence and I'm definitely not going to miss that one. All right, so let's just talk about it. I'm Edward Palmer from the University of Adelaide. Normally we're talking about the ethical use of AI, but I'll cover a few other areas as well. I guess the first thing is, what do we mean by ethically? I think what we typically mean is we're not using AI-generated content without explicit acknowledgement, and it's within the scope of any set assessment task. What I'm really concerned about with AI is more about ensuring that effective learning towards the set outcomes is not impacted by the use of it. So I think there's elements of ethics in the second statement. The first one's relatively clear from our conventional perspective. But the learning is probably the biggest issue that I see with AI at the moment. Why do we care? I think we're here because we all understand that pretty much any written assignment we've generated over the last 10 years can be easily completed by an AI. It may not do a great job. It may be readily detectable at the moment. It's certainly got a certain style, although you can get around that. And there's certainly some tools around which are doing their best to try and detect it. But essentially, a lot of our assignments, the way we have typically delivered them, are compromised to some extent, unless we do something about it, and that may revolve around various different aspects of our education system. AI is definitely going to be used by industry. It's been used for years in that space. Lots of the chatbots that we engage with regularly, lots of the systems that we engage in regularly, they're all based on an artificial intelligence or a machine learning type algorithms. And if industry is going to be using it, then they're going to expect our students to be able to use those systems and fit in with them as well. And we don't quite know what fitting in with those systems really means at this stage, but it's becoming clearer as time goes on. Critical thinking is really, really important using AI systems. Just to note, all the images in this presentation have come from either Deep AI or OpenAI. All right, an example. So this is one of my discussion forums from last year, and it was typically just around about smallpox and the ethics of the generation of the smallpox vaccine, which involved testing it essentially on a small child. The wording of it is essentially there. Discuss the ethics of Edward Jenner's work, who was the inventor of the vaccine. There's a short reading, and I put it in a reference. And I asked the students to think about who the stakeholders of this research were, what their motivations might be, and to respond to other students. Now, there's a couple of mistakes that you make here quite simply that become quite important. By giving an AI tool a reference, it knows how to reference it. So it becomes an immediate problem. We are fairly familiar with the fact that a lot of AI tools can't reference very well. And they're either fake references or they are relatively available ones from Google Books or something along those lines. But if you actually give it the reference to start with, it's going to be quite successful in referencing properly. The answers that you get back, along with the picture generated from AI, are perfectly acceptable for a discussion forum post. So what we recognized relatively early, and pretty much everyone else in the education sector recognized early, was that AI tools could generate text which was, at first glance, probably a second or third glance, quite acceptable. It covered relatively simple concepts or relatively deep concepts fairly well. The English was structured beautifully. It has a style about it that is relatively easily detectable. But if you're marking 300 students discussion forum posts, you're likely to sort of gloss past some of those things. So anyway, what we found was a lot of our assignments were quite compromised by generational AI. And the problem we've got is that it's going to improve dramatically from here. This is just the beginning of what's likely to be a professor in your pocket situation for our students. If they need to talk to someone with expertise, it's literally just one click of a keyboard away. So at the moment, references are really hard, but journals are going to be incorporated at some stage. It's just a matter of changing money. And I can't believe that a lot of these AI companies aren't engaged with journal publishers at the moment, trying to get hold of a data set of all the journal articles. There'll be data sets which become tailor-made for academia. They'll likely remain up to date permanently for a fee. So a lot of students and staff are going to have access to really good AI tools from here. And it's just time. And we don't really seem to have that much of it up our sleeves before we need to change things relatively dramatically. So how do we address this? We've got a number of things we can do. We can rethink how we teach and how students learn. We can think about how and why we assess. Phil's going to be talking about that a little bit later on. I'm really interested to hear what he's got to say because assessment really is at the core of everything here. Good curriculum design can mitigate some of the issues we have. Educating students is absolutely critical. We're already seeing situations where there's dramatic differences between staff which have engaged with their students and taught them about AI and those that have just let it go. And we're seeing students already using AI and they're getting caught by the systems that we have in place. So we're actually setting up some of these students for a bit of failure. We need to understand student perspectives. We need to understand what good behavior is, and we need to model it ourselves. And we need to teach ethics around the use of AI. And deliberately at the bottom of the list, but importantly, we need to have some means of detecting when people are using AI, if we possibly can. It's down the bottom because everything else above it is about the learning process, which is where I'm really focused. What we don't do is we don't ignore it. By pretending it doesn't exist, we're already seeing problems at our institution. Industry's been using it for years. This will only increase. And if we don't train our students, we're really giving them a pretty poor education, I think, moving forwards. How much time do we have? This is entirely my own personal perspective. And historically, no one's been very good at predicting the future at all. But in my mind, this isn't very far away. I think we've got a few months to understand how we can address the arrival of AI in terms of providing basic information and guidelines to students and staff. I think by the middle of the year, the students are going to be pretty much understanding what's going on here and the power of some of the AI tools, because they will engage with each other as well as tools. So I think we've got 9 months to address assessments beyond whatever we're doing at the moment to try and patch up what's not working or we know which is potentially compromised. And then I think in 18 months, I don't see work being submitted that will be distinguishable from that from students. I think it will have full referencing. I think it will have different styles that students could actually implement in the writing. So it's going to be really tricky for AI detection tools to find it, but I'm happy to be convinced otherwise by our expert people. So what sort of perspectives do we need to consider? Students and staff are relatively clear, but there's the policy and guidelines which will govern how students and staff behave within institutions. And we're fairly, I think we all know that everyone is struggling with this conceptually, and our leaders are no different. So they need some understanding and some advice from pretty much anyone who can provide it. We know that our academic integrity staff, they're already working overtime trying to establish how to detect this stuff and then what to do when they do detect it. We don't necessarily understand what is a good use of AI yet in an educational context and what is actually impairing the learning process. And we need automated resources like detection software. At the University of Adelaide, our approach has been pretty good, I think. We've taken a rapid but sort of a don't panic approach. We've been revisiting our assessment and curriculum design at the moment only at a superficial level, but we know what's not going to work and we know what might work. We've got some policy guidelines, not policy itself, because that does take a lot of time to develop correctly, and this is a rapidly changing space. But we've got some good guidelines. We've got some modules online for staff and students to give people a bit of an understanding of what's going on. Importantly, we enlisted a lot of our students as academic integrity advisors, and they went around and they attended every class in our first semester, and they've discussed AI when they're using AI. And we've also developed a community of practice which covers AI. So I think we've done pretty well in the few months that we've had since we came back in 2023. I want to talk a little bit about the community of practice. Communities of practice in general, they provide significant value if they work in lots of different ways. It helps bring different viewpoints together, and there are multiple viewpoints in this scenario that we find ourselves in at the moment. We've got administrators, we've got students, we've got staff, we've got policymakers. We've got a lot of people in the mix here who are trying to find a solution to a challenging issue. Communities of practice allow for topical issues to be discussed, so they don't tend to waffle on too much about things that don't matter. There's a typical focus around a lot of these things, and they're not too bad for spreading knowledge from the grassroots level, the bottom level of staff, essentially, out to the rest of the community. It's much better, in conjunction with a top-down approach from leadership, it can be quite effective. And the other thing that community of practice can do, if it's vibrant and active, it can help inform leadership as well. And that's what's happening with the community of practice we have here. Our community of practice is headed by myself, a computer science lecturer, and an academic integrity director. We have hybrid sessions, so we run Zoom sessions with face-to-face. Ideally, we'd run them all face-to-face, but we want to get as many people along as we possibly can, so we run them hybridly. We have frequent meetings. There's a level of urgency to this, which I think we all understand, and we know that we need to inform the university's decision-making process, and they need us to help them out with that. We have presentations from the people that are concerned. So I've presented there. We've had the library present. We've had students present. We've got lots of activity happening from all the different parties concerned. Obviously, academic integrity has played an integral part in all of that. All the staff are welcome. Students have been by invitation, and that's just to handle the numbers. We just can't fill a room with thousands of students. There's probably a lot of interest there from our students. We've seen that. We aim to have lots of discussion time, and we're focusing on some research activities to try and really understand what's happening in the system at a baseline level. So what have we done? We've had 3 meetings to date. We're preparing our first research projects to launch in the next couple of weeks. We have been informing leadership about what's going on. We've made sure that we've had strong communication to discussion in those meetings. We run them for 90 minutes. We've looked at the academic integrity, detection tools, and assessment approaches to date. Next meeting, we're going to be about practical implementations of how we use AI in our courses. So we're moving along quite rapidly. General conclusions. AI is here to stay, so we need to deal with it. From my perspective, it's the biggest impact on education since the printing press and the internet, and I suspect it's going to have greater impact on our institutions than both of those. We need to find a way to support learning in the AI era. It's going to be relatively easy for students under time pressure to take easy pathways, and we want to avoid that. It may mean going back to Socratic methods of education, a lot more personal interactions, a lot more group work perhaps, lots of feedback going to the students. And how we handle our assessment, I'm going to leave that to Phil, but I've got my own ideas on that one as well. We need our policy to be consistent. We need our curriculum design to be innovative. We need our assessment design to be well thought through. It doesn't necessarily have to change dramatically, but it might do. And we need support from automated systems. And I don't think we make a successful transition unless we address all of these things. So that's me. I'll just stop sharing and we can open up for questions.
Well, thank you very much, Edward, for your presentation. It was really interesting, and actually, at the conclusion of your presentation, you gave the same impression I had when actually artificial intelligence, let's say, arrived in the educational sector. Because the first months of the year, we had some teachers who were really worried about how we can overcome. The first thought was, okay, we need to stop it. Actually, in Italy, the privacy guarantor has decided to stop the possibility of using Chat-GPT, which is one of the most common AI tools to generate text. But of course, students are finding a way to overcome this problem. So the first thought was, okay, how will be able to survive this kind of tool, trying really to put it in a corner and trying to avoiding it. As I think it was the same reaction when internet became common in the daily life of everyone, where the teachers were worried of saying, okay, now all the documents that my students will be sent to me will be written using the copy-paste function from Wikipedia or other sources. And I think that as teachers, and in general, the academic community found the way to coexist with the internet availability almost in every task that we conduct every day. I think it will be the same, of course, also for AI. It's really at the beginning, and as you mentioned, it's changing almost every day. So it's quite difficult to keep the way really up to date with all the changes. But of course, we will find a way to coexist with it. As you mentioned, this is the key: trying to avoid it and trying not to see it. Maybe it's not the right way to deal with this kind of tool. Well, there are some questions, so I would share it with you. For example, one participant asked, what research are you planning to put into place? The first one is this one.
Okay, relatively simple stuff to start with. The goal is really to get enough people engaged, enough people to realise that this is a bit of an issue for the universities. So it's survey design, essentially. We're going to survey our staff and our students in certain cohorts across disciplines, and we're just going to find out what their general use is, what their thoughts about it are, not just from a practical point of view, but from an ethical point of view. I had a strong conversation with my class around this, and I was a little surprised at how offended they were by artificial intelligence and the fact that it provided people with potential shortcuts.
Okay, well, it's nice to know which is the situation, because of course people changed from every institution, so it's really important to know the real situation inside of the institution. Someone, of course, is thanking you for the presentation you had, and is asking some clear ideas of how to incorporate AI in education. Maybe with the self-assessment technique using AI, this could be a way.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that, well, I think there's a lot that will change. One of the things that can definitely change is the way that we as lecturers, academics, teachers actually manage the feedback process for students. There is no reason why you can't get some general feedback as you're actually developing your solutions about things that might be missing from your answers. For that discussion board example that I provided before, there's no reason why you couldn't put your answer into an AI and just give me some feedback on this. Is this an adequate answer for this question? And I think that's a good way of doing it. I think the idea of students creating something and then getting feedback from it from an AI system is very useful. At the moment, what I've redesigned a lot of my discussion board questions, tried to make them more personalised, a little bit harder to crack with an AI. But as I don't know the students personally, it's doable, of course. One of the things I've asked the students to do is just to acknowledge the fact that when they're using AI, so I said, go ahead, use it if you want, but I'd like you to be able to reflect on that. Once again, they can do that reflection through AI as well, but there's a little bit of trust involved here. The other thing I've said is if you're actually using it in a significant way in your project, what I'd like to see is what you've put into the AI system, what it's done, and what the final product is. And we'll see where that goes. I mean, I'm confident that we can, at the moment, we can still detect when people are using AI. There's a certain style to it that's readily visible. And there's some AI detection tools which seem to be relatively competent at this stage. We use Turnitin at our place. And that seems to be doing a reasonable job at the moment, but there's a long way to go here.
Of course, everything is changing almost every day. But actually, the fact to use also AI generating text tool, it's quite a feedback that we had in the past months from our users, saying the first reaction was, okay, we will try to stop it, to let the students do not use it. We will find a way. And after they really saw that maybe students can use, of course, something like Chat-GPT to generate some text, and after they decided to ask the students to prove the idea that Chat-GPT was giving back, in order to prove they really have the knowledge of the subject that they are discussing. So trying really to interact with the tool like that, it's maybe an educational way of using something like this. We have just few more questions. One, it's which is the ethical boundaries of using AI in university, saying which is really the the line, if it's possible to be drawn, of course, from an ethical or unethical use of this kind of tool.
Yep. So I drew my ethical boundary in November I had a PhD student who contacted me and said, I've written this work and I've put it through the AI system and it's come up with this much tighter piece of English. And I looked at it and I agreed it's a much better piece of English. If he'd sent me that piece, I would have probably suggested almost the same sort of things to get to the same sort of result. But he doesn't have that experience. And he asked me, can I just put chunks of my PhD through this and correct the English? And I said, I'll get back to you. And a couple of days later, I did. And I mulled over this one for quite a while because essentially what he was asking for was a professional editing service from a person that's not going to make mistakes in English. He had already done the work. He'd done all the writing. He just wanted to pass it essentially through a system. And I told him, no, take the lessons that you've learned from putting that paragraph through and apply it across your thesis where you think there might be some gaps in that. And my rationale was, one, I just wasn't sure at that time what the right decision was to do, and it seemed better to just say no at that point. But the real driving thing for me was that he was identifiable and he was putting his own PhD thesis into a system with no guidelines around privacy or what's going to happen with that data moving forwards. And I just felt that he was potentially setting himself up for a problem in the future if someone got hold of that data set and managed to blackmail him, for example, and say, look, you used AI for this. We don't know what the AI future is going to be around PhD theses. And so I took a very, very cautious approach on it, not always like me. Today I learned there's a couple of universities that have just said, go ahead, shove it straight through and tidy it up if you want to. It's just, they consider it just to be an editing service. And to some extent, that's correct. I just feel that there's more discussion needed around that particular question before that we go down that pathway. So ethical boundaries are moving because I guess we just need to rethink what they are. Where's the original work? Where's the human work here? Why are we penalizing students for not being able to write in perfect English?
I think it's a really good point of view. And maybe, yeah, it's just an open question, of course, for the audience today. So thank you very much, Edward. There are some more questions. I suggest to continue right now our morning talk with the next experts. Just before giving all the stage to Professor Newton, I will just ask you, the audience, to answer a quick question. Saying, of course, what do you think about, for example, Chat-GPT or in general the AI tools that are on the market, on the public eye since the last few months? Do you consider them a threat or an opportunity for education? Because this is a question that, of course, in the few days where Chat-GPT was launched on the public scenario, I think that most of the academics were thinking about it as a threat because it was something new, something also not under control, and I think that almost anyone wasn't able to react, of course, in an educational way just at the beginning. But right now, also seeing the presentation of Edward, we can maybe think about this. About these tools as an opportunity which can be integrated in the daily educational tasks that are required. And I think this is most of the audience idea. So I think it's quite nice to know. Right now, we can go on with the presentation of Professor Phil Newton. I will give you the session control. So Phil, if you want to share your screen, you're able to do it, and we will listen to your presentation. I think, yeah, just a few seconds that the screen will be shared.
Okay. Can you see the screen and can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see the screen, so it's up to you.
Okay. Thanks, Edward, for setting me up, for having all the answers for assessment design. I will say right now, I don't have the answers, and I would be very wary of anyone who says that they do. And regarding the results of the poll, I think it is a threat and an opportunity, and it's an enormous opportunity, but I think it is also a significant threat. And the way that universities tend to work, the speed at which we work, I suspect the threat is going to be coming first, followed by the opportunity. What I'm going to do is I'll just start by explaining who I am and why I'm here, how I've come to be sitting here. I'm a neuroscientist by background. My interest is in the science and the study of learning, and I've done some work in the past few years to try and apply that science to learning, teaching, and assessment in higher education. I've done lots of work in the last 10 years or so on academic integrity and on assessment, and I have never seen anything like Chat-GPT. And when it first came out, we were all very excited, and I spent a few weeks chasing it around, trying to work out ways to design assessments that could limit its influence and to prevent some of the threats that we're all aware of. And every single one of those projects failed. Although it was a considerable amount of work for me to do. And I ended up just over a month ago on a train on the way back home from a conference in an existential crisis. I really was very concerned about the speed at which this technology was moving, the astonishing capabilities that it has, and a worry about the capability of our QA systems in higher education to be able to respond to it. So to make myself feel better, I asked one of the AI tools to make a picture of a professor sitting on a train experiencing an existential crisis. And here it is. This is supposed to be me. Although I think it is worth noting as an aside that 10 different images were generated by this tool. And in every single one, the professor was a middle-aged white man, which is just one of the very many challenges I think we face with adopting and integrating these tools. So we're used to disruption in higher education now. COVID was an enormous challenge, and it was not the first, and it won't be the last. And there's a lot written about how to manage challenge in higher education. And one of the things that comes up frequently is when dealing with significant challenges, we should stick to our core values and make sure that we maintain a focus on why we're doing the things that we're doing. So that's what I'm going to focus on this morning then. My core values, and I think the core values of higher education. Personally, I'm a pragmatist. I think we have to accept some of the challenges and the limitations that are going to come from these tools and adapt to them in a pragmatic way. We have to maintain a focus on the evidence around what these tools can and can't do, and what makes a good assessment and what makes effective learning and teaching and so on. So a particular focus on the evidence and what makes a good assessment. And something that I think is getting lost a little bit in some of the discussion around these tools is an understanding of how and why we learn, the basic mechanics, the science of that process. And that's mostly actually what I'm going to talk about. And then some lessons learned from the research I've done in academic integrity, and Edward's touched upon all these already. When we're trying to make sure that students act with integrity, when we want a culture of integrity within our education systems or our workplace, we have to make it easy for those things to happen. We have to make it easy for students to do the right thing. And as part of that, we have to also make it hard for them to do the wrong thing. And one of the punchlines from this session that lessons I've learned from looking at Chat-GPT over the last few months is that it makes it very, very, very easy for students to do the wrong thing as defined by our current assessment systems. So we'll start briefly then with the evidence about what these tools can do. And Edward's already touched upon some of these, and many of you will be familiar with this. So I'm not going to go through it in great detail. I think it's safe to say that Chat-GPT and similar tools, in particular GPT-4, can write essays, and they can do a really good job of it, and they're only getting better day by day. These tools can also solve complex problems. I will show you an example of that in a second. They can do all sorts of higher level academic activities. They can write academic papers. They can write code. They can use that code to generate websites and other tools, and many, many more things besides. And every day there are new examples of astonishing things that these tools can do. One of the common refrains that we hear certainly that I have read a lot when considering the impact of these tools on higher education, is that if ChatGPT can answer your assessment questions, then you're setting the wrong assessment questions. And maybe we should scrap tests. Maybe we should scrap essays. Maybe we should be accepting the fact that students are going to use this technology in the real world. And I think that there's something to that. And it was already touched upon some of the really valid points around that. We are going to have to prepare our students for a world in which these tools are ubiquitous. But there is a really important place for understanding how and why we learn, and in particular, the importance of foundational knowledge. So when we're teaching students or expecting students to use these tools to do critical appraisal or literature reviews or to write essays or to diagnose problems or to solve problems, in order to do that higher order activity, the students will have to have basic foundational knowledge. We can't do any higher order critical thinking unless we have basic foundational knowledge. And I'm going to show you an example of that because, as I said, I think this is something that gets lost in the discussion. So this is an example of problem solving as undertaken by ChatGPT. What I'm going to show you here is a question from the USMLE. That's the United States Medical Licensing Exam. It's one of the exams that medical students have to take in the United States in order to be able to become a doctor. Now, I do lots of work on training people how to do effective presentations. And one of the things we tell them over and over again is don't put too much text on the slide and expect people to read it. However, life is complicated. Medicine is complicated. So here we have an example of a slide with lots of text on. I hope you're able to read at least some of it. It doesn't matter if you can't, and please don't spend too much time reading it. I can explain to you that what's happening here is a description of a clinical scenario. And the clinical scenario describes a young boy who's got scurvy. Scurvy is a disease that's caused by a lack of vitamin C in the diet. And so in this question, which a medical student would have to pass in order to become a doctor, they are asked to read the scenario, and then the specific thing that they're being asked to do is to identify what more information do you need as a doctor to be able to figure out what to do next for this patient. So it's most appropriate to obtain specific additional history regarding which of the following in this patient. Now, this is a multiple choice test, and here are the 5 options that the medical student would be given. And the correct answer is diet. We would want to know more about the diet. Specifically, are they getting enough vitamin C, which might then lead us to figure out whether or not this is or is not scurvy. This is a high-level, critical thinking, problem-solving, multiple choice question. If we feed this question to ChatGPT, it gets it right. Not only does it get it right, it gives us a really useful and important and helpful explanation about why the correct answer is the correct answer. This might lead us naturally to think, well, if ChatGPT can solve these questions, why do we need medical students to be able to pass them without ChatGPT? And what I hope to be able to persuade you of is the fundamental importance of medical students and anyone having the foundational knowledge to be able to solve them problems themselves before they might go on to use ChatGPT. So if we take this problem scenario and we break it down, in the yellow box at the top here, we have the basic information that the doctor would be given or the medical student would be given when the patient comes in to the clinic. Very basic information about pain and fatigue and so on. What the scenario then goes on to describe is what the doctor or the medical student discovers when they examine the patient. Now, in order for the doctor to be able to know how to examine the patient and what to look for, they have to know what to look for and what those basic presentations mean. What clues does that give the medical student? If we just fed that first part into ChatGPT, it wouldn't know what to look for because it doesn't have that basic foundational knowledge. When the medical student does then the examination, they get given a whole bunch of information that has these very esoteric technical terms: erythematous hair follicles, ecmoses, dentition, etc., etc. Someone who doesn't have the basic foundational knowledge wouldn't know what to look for. They wouldn't know what the terms were when they got that information. And so they wouldn't know what to put into ChatGPT in order to be able to get the correct answer unless they had that basic foundational knowledge. they wouldn't then know what to ask the patient or the patient's parent in this case for more information about in order to be able to get the correct information to be able to help the patient. The summary of this situation is, unless the doctor or the medical student has the basic foundational knowledge, they won't know how to use ChatGPT. If we were to try and assess this basic foundational knowledge in a way where students have access to ChatGPT, they will copy and paste the question in and reproduce the correct answer without demonstrating that they personally have that informational knowledge. So we have to assess foundational knowledge in a way that is uncomplicated by and unclouded by ChatGPT. Because it's a short presentation, I've used an example from medicine, and you'll just have to take my word for it. I think that this principle applies to any discipline. If you're a lawyer, you're an engineer, you're a scientist, you're a historian, you're a philosopher, we all have our esoteric terminology, our higher level critical thinking based upon our foundational core principles and facts. It's very easy for me to explain it with medicine. So what does make a good assessment? Very simply, a good assessment is a measure of what somebody can actually do. Now, in the example of that question from the USMLE, we're using answering the question as what they can do as a proxy for being able to do something else. There is a number of reasons for that: cost, patient safety, administrative resource time, and other considerations. But at the end of the day, we're asking them to solve a clinical problem and make a recommendation that we would hope they would then enact. There's a lot more written about what makes a good assessment that we don't have time to go into in great detail, but these are terms that you'll be hopefully somewhat familiar with. I think one of the things we need to do, and do very quickly, is to ensure that as educators we are assessment literate. We talk a lot about our students being assessment literate, but there's abundant evidence to show that terms such as validity, reliability, authenticity, and so on are not things that most educators are familiar with in a way that would allow them to use these core principles from assessment theory in their everyday practice. And I think universities have, one of the things I would recommend that we all try and do is make ourselves familiar with these and pressure our universities and our employers to do the same. When we're trying to consider each of these aspects of assessment design, there are lots of practical aspects, practical considerations that we need to factor in. Do we make an assessment invigilated or uninvigilated? Is it open book? Is it closed book? Is it real time, or do they do it in their own time? And each of these practical considerations on the left side of the screen affects the assessment theory principle on the right-hand side. So if I give you an example, let's say we were setting an essay, and we wanted that essay to be conducted in a way that secured the integrity of that assessment, then we would do the assessment in the following way. We would have it as an invigilated, closed book, in-person, real-time exam, basically. It would be low stakes to reduce motivation for cheating. It would be unseen. The students wouldn't have sight of it before. And these would be the measures that we would take to make sure that the assessment was secure, that it had integrity. Another key thing that I think often gets lost in this discussion about the impact of AI tools is that there are many features to assessment design. Integrity is one of them. It's really important. If we can't secure the integrity of an assessment, then we can't guarantee that the assessment is a reflection of learning, and everything falls apart from there. But we do want assessments to have other really important features. Authenticity is a really key one. We want students to learn how to do academic writing. We want them to do it in a way that will prepare them for using those writing skills in the real world. If we wanted an authentic assessment of academic writing, then it would basically be the opposite of the way that it was delivered that secured integrity. It would be uninvigilated. It would be open book. We'd give students the opportunity to do it in their own time. We might allow them to do it online. We would tell them in advance what it was they were being able to do, and so on. All of these considerations, I think, have to be revisited in light of ChatGPT. And the main consideration, or a significant consideration, that again I think is getting lost to an extent in all of the discussion we're having about this, is that currently ChatGPT is a website that we log into and we feed things to. But very soon, if not already, ChatGPT and related technologies are part of Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, Microsoft PowerPoint. When we ask students to write essays in the next academic year, these tools are going to be built in, and the students are going to be using them, often whether they realize it or not. I think this means we can't separate out the technology in our policy. I don't think we can set students an asynchronous essay in the way that we used to and tell them that they can't use ChatGPT because it's going to be right under their noses, and the tools that we give them to write the essay are going to have the technology built in. So we have to accept that they're going to use it. And I think, and again, Edward's already alluded to this, ChatGPT is the headline technology that's grabbing all the attention. There are dozens, hundreds of similar technologies that are being developed and released on a regular basis. So to finish then, I think if we're thinking about what a good assessment is a measure of what somebody can do, as I said. If we want people to do that assessment without ChatGPT, we want them to measure their foundational knowledge, and hopefully I've persuaded you that foundational knowledge is really important, then I think we have to do it in a way that maximizes the integrity of the assessment. And I do think that means traditional exam conditions. Now, this is something that lots of people don't like to hear, and lots of people find very challenging as a consideration, as a thought. The phrase that's often used is "go back to old-fashioned exams," but I think we have to do that to an extent, because foundational knowledge is really important, and we can't assess foundational knowledge in an environment where ChatGPT is available, because it makes it so easy for students to do the wrong thing, and then the assessment is not a reflection of their foundational knowledge. If we want assessments to be authentic, then I think we have to allow them to use ChatGPT, because ChatGPT and tools like it are going to be everywhere. They are everywhere. They're going to be in the workplaces that we're preparing our students for, and we have to redesign our assessments and our rubrics, the way that we mark, to say perhaps we're not assessing what it is that students have written, but we're assessing what it is that they have asked ChatGPT to do, for example. I think I've already made this point multiple times, so I won't dwell on it again. It is worth just repeating in a summary form. I think that ChatGPT makes it incredibly easy for students to do the wrong thing according to the way that our assessments are currently designed. And if ChatGPT is under a student's nose and they engaged in a high stakes assessment which contributes to their progression and their future employment, they are going to use it. And all of the work that we've done in academic integrity tells us that over and over again with other tools that came before ChatGPT. Just a brief list of some academic references that we've covered in this. And if you have any questions, I, like Edward, are going to have to go slightly early. It's not my mother's birthday, but I have to go and do another webinar on ChatGPT because everybody wants to hear about it. So please do put your questions in the chat, and if we haven't got time to get to them, that's my email address, and I'm happy to answer them as best I can. And with that, I'll stop sharing and I'll hand back to Martina.
Thank you very much, Phil. It was really interesting, and I saw that some discussion already took place in the chat section. It was really really nice to see, and I agree with your point of view, saying if we train students to use ChatGPT or in general artificial intelligence, we need to train them, we need to set up some guides, so it's really important to give all the information in order to of course, to use in an educational way this kind of tool. And for example, following the medical example that you present before, I read an article in the last months asking ChatGPT, for example, 10 patients. This is the medical situation, and they asked ChatGPT to find a cure for the diseases that they have, just putting a little bit of information. So, as you said before, not all the examination part that of course just a human and a doctor specifically can do. And out of 10, just 2 patients survived the ChatGPT cure that was found. So this really gives the idea that of course the more input we give to a machine, the better results we will obtain. But of course, the human part and the expert part, for example, in the medical sector, it's a key in the success. And for example, one of the participants actually said that there were some problems of motivation of students, specifically in the computer science field, because they are asking, what should I learn to code when the machine can do it for me? And I think it's a feedback, a normal feedback in this case, but of course the specific part will do the difference in this case, but also in other fields. And just to go through some of the questions that were posed in the chat, so we can of course give it to you. One of the participants asked, what are your thoughts on Elon Musk version of Chat-GPT through GPT?
My thoughts are, I have never heard of it until it appeared in the chat box, and I think that's illustrative of the speed with which these tools are moving. Once we're done here, I'm going to go and look up Truth GPT, but the thought that a new tool, I've learned of a new tool today, the thought that my university and our university's QA systems might adapt to this new tool in a rapid way that allows it not to have an influence on their assessment procedures, I think is extremely unlikely. I don't know if Edward is more familiar with AI tools, whether he has a view on Truth GPT.
Okay.
No, I was just looking it up just then. It seems to be, it had Bitcoin linked to it and a whole bunch of other stuff. It seems to be a fact-based AI, but considering the source, I'm a little bit skeptical.
I think I would like to pick up on the question that actually Edward has posed in the chat about there's two questions really about whether we need to do a majority or all of our assessments in a lockdown traditional exam type format, and whether or not we over assess. I think taking the second part of that, the idea that we over assess students is something that comes up a lot, particularly in UK higher education, and I know that it comes up elsewhere. I actually think we under-assess students. I think we need to do a lot more assessment. One of the things that we didn't have time to talk about in great detail is this idea of retrieval practice based upon the basic science of learning, the fundamental principle of which is that what a really powerful, effective, evidence-based way to learn in a deep, efficient, and transferable way is to take practice tests. And the more practice tests that you take, the more effective it is. Writing your own practice tests as a learner is perhaps more effective still. And rather than reduce the number of assessments that we do, I think we need to do many more of them, but that they need to be low stakes or no stakes or formative, because it really, really does drive and help learning. Regarding the reliance on sort of so-called closed book examinations, I think having a closed book invigilated assessment is not necessarily the same as doing a traditional pen and paper exam. So I do think we need to make sure that the majority of our assessments, let me rephrase that, if we don't want students to use ChatGPT to complete an assessment, then I do think it needs to be closed book in the sense that there's an invigilator, but we can give students the opportunity to do almost anything within that environment. And that can include examining a patient from the perspective of medicine, doing some data analysis, doing a presentation, doing some other practical skill, or it can be a traditional closed book exam, in a gymnasium with a pen and paper. The key thing is that it's invigilated, and so it's a true reflection of what the student can do and not what ChatGPT can do.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. I just want to share with all of you one of the comments that I saw in the chat. One of the participants said it would be fascinating to fit these questions and find out what AI has to say. So maybe we will we will give it a go.
So what I would say, I did do that, and it was about 15 minutes worth of presentation, which I cut out in the interest of time. The summary is it recommended 12 things, one of which was don't do assessments that ChatGPT can answer, do oral presentations instead. A whole set of recommendations were around using lockdown browsers and timed exams, and other ways to make exams secure. that we already do. And then a whole set of other recommendations were around writing questions in a way that ChatGPT can't answer. And one of the projects that I alluded to earlier, which failed dramatically, was trying to write questions that ChatGPT couldn't answer, because every time we came up with a protocol for writing questions that ChatGPT couldn't answer, ChatGPT got better. And GPT-4, I think, has reached a point now where it's passed pretty much every medical licensing exam. And the things that it can do are beyond the bounds of what we could design out meaningfully in an assessment question, while still retaining the validity and reliability and so on of that question. But yes, do give it a go and see if you can come up with some more.
We will share the results after. Okay, well, thank you very much, Phil, for your presentation. It was really nice to hear all of this point of view, and of course, I think that's really important that the academic staff really tries to to find a way to use this kind of tool in an educational way. It's really important. It takes and it requires a lot of time, but I think that the results will give some some thoughts, something more that will be given to the students. Now, just before going on, I think that maybe you saw him. There is also Frederic Agnès, who joined us in the conference, the CEO of Compilatio. So he will. Hi, you will talk later about, of course, AI and what Compilatio is doing right now. Just before going back to Zeenath for her presentation, I will just start a small poll asking our audience. So in this case, it's really an open question. So feel free if you want to answer through the poll, or if you want to write something in the chat, or the third option is also to raise your hand and we can unmute your microphone. Which action, of course, are related to AI, because it's the topic, have already taken place at your institution. Of course, if something has been already done, we saw in, I think, the first poll that some institution already did some action to face this kind of situation, of subject, not to saying problem. So someone is saying training modules. I think that's a really good start. I don't know, it wasn't specified if it was for teachers or students, but of course both sides must be taken into account in this subject. One of the participants is using Compilatio, of course, to see if the work contains some plagiarism or some text written by AI. So this can be also a way to follow. And yeah, some discussion just at the beginning, but it's everything is new and everything is really up to date from the day before. So of course everything is changing regarding this. There is some talks about ChatGPT for teachers. So it's nice to see that, yeah, some talks and meeting at the department level on how to approach AI and how to redesign different assessments. I think it's a really good start, as also both Edward and Phil told us before. So yeah, I think that really starting at least talking about these tools, it's really a first step to create and to share, of course, the knowledge both with the academic staff and the students. So it's already something. Well, Phil, thank you very much for your presentation. Right now, I will give the stage to Zeenath. I will just transfer to you the session controls, so you are able right now to share your screen and we will listen to generative AI, the perspective of students and the student champions. So what has been done in your Center of Academic Integrity?
Thank you so much again for this opportunity and inviting me. It's an absolute honor to be actually sharing this space with Edward and Phil Newton. Phil doesn't know this, but I'm a huge fan. You were one of the people I actually cited in my PhD some time back. So quite exciting to be here with you. Hi everyone. So I'm Zeenath from UAE. I'm actually a Bangladeshi who is teaching at an Australian university in the Middle East. So quite a global campus that we have. We've got over 80 nationalities in the university, reflecting the 200 nationalities that actually currently live in the United Arab Emirates. So I want to talk a little bit from the perspective of what we have done, how we have responded, because we have a national level Center for Academic Integrity, which is now a working group under European Network for Academic Integrity, NI. Through that center, we actually have access to a few universities, students, and school students. So we do a lot of work in and around academic integrity, research integrity with student, staff, faculty, management, etc. Just a quick disclaimer, some of the slides that I've used here today, I have taken from previous presentations of mine on the topic, on technology and education, etc. So I'm hoping to be able to just quickly touch upon what were the concerns that we saw and how we have kind of been responding to it, particularly from the center and through the campus itself. Of course, our previous speakers have already talked about the paradigm shifts that we have seen in education because of a whole lot of things like globalization. COVID-19 was a huge disruptor in itself, and so on and so forth. But I think information sharing and connectedness has taken this whole, the way we look at education anyways to a whole different level. Just giving you a perspective, a technology like telephone took about 100 million, took about 75 years to reach 100 million users. Facebook took about 5 years to reach 100 million users. And a game like Pokemon Go took only less than a month to reach 100 million users. So I think that gives us a perspective of how fast information is constantly being shared because of the level at which we are all connected. Post-COVID, I think the world is even more connected, even more dependent on the internet, on the information that we are constantly receiving in our smartphones through social media and so on and so forth. I think Phil has already mentioned this a couple of times as well. And I think that question about truth GPT kind of put this whole thing into perspective for us as well. So we know that because of EdTech, learning has become more authentic. It's improving skills, it's increasing collaboration, and of course, our students are being future ready because, let's face it, the workplaces are already using technology. So why the worry? What we did was we have had some quick surveys here with particularly with teachers and their concerns around technology in classrooms. And as you can see, about 80 people were attending that workshop, and this is how they've answered the question. Across the range, they found things they're worried about is impacting writing skills, copying and pasting, sharing answers over the internet sites and social media, copyright infringements, cheating in exams, getting essays from assignment writers, using paraphrasing tools, and so on and so forth. So artificial intelligence in education. So before I go ahead, I probably want to just ask everybody this question. See the text in front of you. Are you able to tell me where you think this is from? Any guesses? Now, because I'm sharing the screen, I'm not able to see the chat.
I will do it for you, Zeenath, without any problem.
Okay. So any guesses on where you think this text is from and what it refers to?
I think the audience is thinking, trying to find the right answer.
In a moment. So Manu says AI, okay.
Exactly. Difficult to say.
Okay. Okay, so what's really interesting, and this is why I'm sharing this, is actually an excerpt from Gulliver's Travel, which was written in 1726, and it referred to a machine called the engine. which in science fiction world is the first known recorded mention of something similar to a chatbot. So it's not something new in that sense. I think we've always have had this romance with artificial intelligence, and I think a lot of the narrative and perception is led by the science fiction that we either read or we watch in movies, which always are larger than life with killer robots coming at us and things like that. So I think that fortunately is what drives the narrative. And I think somebody in the chat also said that we shouldn't forget people attending this are already interested in AI, already working with AI. So it might be a lot more enlightened group versus the general public, where the narrative very much is being dictated by the science fiction and the Hollywood and all the movies and shows that are coming out. So the next question I would like to ask is, how many of you have used AI, either in your classrooms or just in your general life?
Someone says, I have a lot.
Lot, okay.
Just for curiosity.
Okay, so I'm assuming everybody is talking. Are you all talking about Chat-GPT or anything around text generation, code generation? Okay, face detection. Okay. Make presentations. Okay. So most of it is more to do with content generation. But here's a thought though. Every time you are on your phone and there's an autocorrect, every time you're on Google and it's autofilling, all of this is driven in the background by AI. We actually don't realize how much we are using AI on a daily basis, right? And I think, again, that is very important as to have as a perspective, because Chat-GPT kind of blew up, it was like in our faces in January. Everybody's been scrambling to think, oh, this is something completely new. This is something, we've never used. We are anxious. It's taking over the world. It's been around for a while. This screenshot is from Parallel Consulting's study in 2021, where they showed that 84% of people that they had studied had used AI in different forms: email spam filters, predictive search terms, Siri, for instance. If you're actually using Siri, that's AI, online virtual assistants, Facebook recommended news, etc., etc. And 50% of these people didn't even realize that they were using AI. AI in education, of course, I think all of us, again, are very passionate about education. So we understand the variety of ways in which it really has been enhancing and helping us in making learning more authentic, more interactive. We're able to provide personalized learning, collaborative learning, and so on and so forth. With content generators, again, everybody started talking about it only this January, but Chat-GPT itself has been there since last year. And 2016, I believe, was the first time we had a news agency like Washington Post use AI to generate an article and actually publish it in news. So again, these things have been happening for a while: images, videos, music, and there have been concerns around those as well. So again, not something new, 100% new that we are looking at. So why all the hoopla about Chat-GPT? I think it's mostly because of the conversational nature of this platform. We, as Phil and Edward have said, there are hundreds of these kind of softwares and platforms out there that you can use. But this one has become really, really popular with everybody. Of course, one is because Microsoft decided to invest in it, but also because it is conversational. That's a genius way of getting people involved, right? It's a very simple thing to do, and it's a very interactive and engaging thing that holds your interest. And because of that, this one took about less than 2 months to reach 100 million users. We all have seen some of these headlines. And when we started seeing the headlines, we got really worried, and we were like, what do we do? How do we address what is the narrative and the conversation happening here? So through the center, What we did was, the very first thing that we did was we approached SRC, which is the Student Representative Council. We told them, please join hands with us, the center, and let's hold an open mic day for students. Even the students really didn't think anybody was going to show up or what there was going to be any uptake of this event. But wow, we went the full time. We had fantastic conversations with students coming forward and talking to us about what they had heard. And one of the biggest things that kept coming out was, I didn't even know it existed till I heard that it was being banned by some universities. And that said a lot to us about how students were actually finding out about this tool and about the narrative that was coming forward in the news and in their social media and so on and so forth. So we wanted to definitely change that narrative. We've had successive meetings with faculty members, teachers, students from different universities and schools coming together to figure out what are the things that we can do. So we said, okay, we're going to celebrate International Day of Education, which is actually the 26th of Jan, but we did it on the 31st for a lot of other school students and university students, just talking to them about what is AI, what is ChatGPT, what are the things that people might be talking about, what are the things that they should be looking out for, and things like that. That led us also to develop a good practice guide for schools and universities, just generally giving them an idea about what is artificial intelligence, what is generative AI, what is ChatGPT, what does GPT-3 or 4 mean, what are the concerns, what are the ways that they can address this, so on and so forth. Very simple, document that actually explains it in a layman's term so that anybody can understand. We organized a lot of these panel sessions and postcards, webinars. We've been recording them and sharing them with all the campuses that are involved. And what's also interesting is we've had students heavily involved in these conversations as well, so that could go forward as, again, supplement to these webinars that we have done. So making sure that the student voices were constantly there in all of the conversations that we were having. We are being constantly invited to talk in the local radio stations, not just myself, but other faculties from my campus as well as from the center, to talk about ChatGPT and how are we looking at it? How are our students looking at it? What are the concerns that we have? We've been extremely proactive with this whole thing. We've had education committee meetings. We've been asking faculty to experiment in classrooms with ChatGPT. We've been asking students to experiment in classrooms with the guidance from faculty members, providing that guidance on how and where to use it and where not to use it. Opening the dialogue about the tools, opportunities, risks, rather than students thinking this is something to hide, making it a very safe space for them to come and speak to us about it, because we are, as lecturers, we are the subject experts. So we should know how to incorporate this, or how this is going to impact our assessments. And again, as both Edward and Phil have said, if an assessment is something that a student can put into ChatGPT and get an answer, something's giving. It's our assessment questions are not working. What we have found is, if it's more reflective, for instance, it really helps. If it's something that they're having to take from out of the classroom and then work on, that helps as well, things like that. Our home campus in Wollongong, Australia, they have also been very, very proactive with email updates to staff and students, policy statement updates, just making sure everybody knows that you have to acknowledge it, where, if you're using it, you can use it where it is allowed and permitted. Having training and workshops through different sections of the university, and an entire web page that has now been dedicated to the conversations in and around artificial intelligence. We did a quick survey of students in the UAE. The survey is still going on, and it's quite an extensive one, but I've just managed to collect some preliminary information that I can share. For instance, one of the questions was, how often do you use ChatGPT in your school or university? 44%, which was the majority, said rarely. Nobody said all the time. 27% said sometimes, and 27% said never. We also asked, how useful is ChatGPT in giving outlines or starting points for your work? Majority seemed to be in the point of Likert scale 3 and 4. 1 was supposed to be the lowest, 5 being the most maximum, how much they found it to be useful. So some of them found it useful, some of them didn't. Some of the conversations that we've had in and around this particular question, students are very, they're very sharp in terms of understanding how much they can rely on the tool. But these are, again, senior students in universities, not the junior students like the first years, and definitely not the high schools. But having said that, we've also had a very interesting session with high school students, grades 9, 10, 11, because we just had a spring camp on academic integrity with school students. And some of their conversations, actually, while they were using ChatGPT as part of the camp, they said, this software is so dumb, and you should have seen the frustration. Like they were actually expecting it to be intelligent. But I have to, of course, give a disclaimer. That was the ChatGPT, not Bard or GPT-4. So I think this is where we realize that we really need to be ahead of this conversation where students are concerned, so that we can direct how they are introduced to it and whether they realize the risks and challenges of it or not. Another question we had asked was, how useful is ChatGPT answer as actual response to university or university school work? Again, only 5% said it was useful, but otherwise, majority have found it to be either somewhat useful or not useful at all. So, which shows, the maturity of students coming into using the technology. Some of the teachers' feedback that we had following on from the students' experiences was that the students, this was mostly school students, school teachers, and some university teachers, and this was done in January. So as you can see, at that time, teachers felt, oh my God, it's simply they'll simply use it and write the assignments and submit. Teachers will not be able to distinguish work done by ChatGPT or student. Students are plagiarizing. So one of the high school teachers said it's end of high school English. Somebody said debts to essays, negative impact on students' learning. But as you can see, these surveys that we are doing, we've been doing this since the mid of this month. It's been going on. So students aren't using it as much as we think they are. So the concerns that we discussed based on actual uses of ChatGPT by faculty and students, just a quick summary. Same question prompt made multiple times can generate different outputs. It is not copying and pasting. It is generating seemingly original text. So it's not plagiarism. It definitely does raise copyright concerns. Text generated is not considered third-party content because AI has not been given sentient status of existence, as it has no consciousness. So it cannot be categorized at this stage as contract cheating. Content generated cannot be detected with high confidence, although there are some tools coming out to help with identification. Lack of understanding of context that can lead students to misinformation and misunderstanding of content. This was very interesting, particularly from students from the non-technical backgrounds, because with technical, I think somebody had also put a comment about programming and coding and how students are demotivated. You're right, but again, if you actually do an active exercise with the students in your coding classes and show them the errors in the code that ChatGPT produces, they will realize that they cannot depend on it 100%. So something exactly as Phil said, that you do need a certain level of basic knowledge to be able to prompt correctly, as Edward said, and also to be able to understand the how the information that it's providing. Content generated cannot always be trusted because it can give wrong information or fill the gap, create information, and produce with confidence. And this was something that students were really surprised about. There is developer bias and dataset bias, as Phil's example with the image has showed. So information cannot always be trusted to be free of any kind of bias. And students, the problem is if students are not made part of this conversation and we are not leading that narrative, they don't necessarily have the know-how to identify this bias. Students have said this is not the first disruptor. So why are faculty in other countries reacting the way they are? I loved this quote from Matt Miller on Twitter. He said, "They disrupt traditional teaching. We adapt. Education evolves. Blocking them isn't the answer. Making education more relevant is." So going forward with academic integrity, we already know in the UAE a lot in the workplace is changing. People are using ChatGPT already. The education sector, the Ministry of Education have heavily supported ChatGPT and said they're going to be coming up with frameworks and policies to support universities and schools so that we can incorporate ChatGPT in a positive way. A lot has been said, particularly if you're on Twitter, please follow for people like, for instance, Thomas Lancaster, Sarah Eaton. They're really leading this conversation on originality and academic integrity when it comes to artificial intelligence. What are the things that we have been telling people based on our experience with students? Please yourselves get on ChatGPT. If you haven't used it at all, learn how it works, where it works. Does it respond to prompts in your subject area? Because you are the subject expert. So you have that power to really dictate how this is going to impact your students. Discuss this tool with your students, both the positives and negatives. Create that open atmosphere of dialogue with your students. And as of course Edward and Phil, especially Phil's presentation, have mentioned, please rethink your assessments. And what we tell our teachers is, please don't be afraid to ask, what am I actually trying to test or assess with this assessment? And that really kind of holds a mirror to us. And make students co-creators of learning in the classroom, because they really are fantastic champions. Once you get them to understand, they start that conversation. They are the ones leading the conversation in their spaces, in those WhatsApp groups, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that becomes a fantastic, again, positive approach to using generative AI in education. Other things that we do on a constant basis to build that culture of integrity is, designate student champions, create artifacts, organize events, and of course we have a misconduct clinic or triage clinic, where we tell students if they're afraid, if they're concerned, if there's a case going on, they can come and speak to us so that we can support them, and so on and so forth. And of course, the center is a fantastic point of contact for all people in education: parents, teachers, students, and management. So we are always open for research collaborations, discussions, and workshops. Final takeaways. I'm not going to go with this. This is just like a summary of everything that I've just said. These are some references and a quick welcome to our conference in December. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zeenath, for your presentation. I think it's really interesting to see how we can actually support. Goodbye, Edward. I saw that you have to go. Thank you very much for your time. It was really nice to hear from you. So hope to see you in the future. And yes, I think it's really important, as you said, Zeenath, to really support, of course, the academic stuff, but also the students, and to let them know that the institution, which can be really from a policy point of view, from the managing board, but also from the teachers, that they see really every day in their classes, to feel really supported, saying, we know you may face some difficulties in presenting an original work. Maybe me as a teacher, I'm trying to upgrade the level of difficulty to actually see if you have the knowledge to fulfill the course, to pass the exams, to write your thesis. So there will be some obstacles to be that has to be overcome. But I think it's really important for the students to say, we are here on your side. You are not alone. And of course, maybe you will have, you will tend to use a shortcut as ChatGPT can actually be used for. But remember that if you want to do the right work, you have a list of tools, a list of experts, specialized professors and teachers that are on your side, that can help you to, of course, to face the obstacles and the challenges that the academic world requires.
Absolutely. And I think we've been lucky, because even when COVID hit, 2 years before that, we were already moving to blended learning across the campus. So everybody was getting trained on online, preparing online lectures, giving lectures online, and so on and so forth. Same thing with this. Already for the last 1.5 years, we've been reassessing and all our assessments in across the board in all faculties. So again, when this hit, everybody's like, okay, but I don't think students can really use ChatGPT for my assessment, you know. So that's like the majority of our faculty, that's the feedback they will give us. And because we are so open on campus, I can see students having that open ChatGPT open. But when we are doing engagement activities in the class, I barely ever see them even touching that device. Right, and that says a lot, and that's something that even other lecturers say that, yeah, I don't see students using it. I've told them they can use it because I know they cannot really answer what I'm asking them to do in my class. So I think that level of confidence and you know, that perception of safe space for students is very important as well.
Of course, and maybe in the case that you mentioned, students are really aware that there are some that there is some support from the institution, and so they don't have the they don't want to use this kind of cheating tools if they are used, of course, in in an unethical way, because they feel supported, and if they have some questions, they know that the institution is just by their side. And I think it's really important to set up an environment, an educational environment where students are feeling supported by the academic stuff in general. Yeah, as one participant said, support and trust based on partnership rather than only on punishing. I think it's really summarized all the point of view, and it's I think it's really difficult also from the teacher's point of view to really rethink your work and your way to, for example, to conduct the course, but also the exams and all the evaluation part. I think it really takes time, resources, and effort from your point of view. But it's really nice to see, for example, with all of you today, really the effort you are putting in this subject to do something, let's say, a way better, to really try to establish a better environment for the teachers and the students in general, the academic environment. It's really nice to hear this.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much again, Zeenath. I think we can go on with the last poll for today. So before passing the word to Frederic, we would like to know, in your institution, which actions are already in place to prevent cheating in general among students. As I mentioned before, we deal with plagiarism prevention. We talked about artificial intelligence today. So in different ways, there are several ways for students to cheat on their work. One can be the copy paste. One can be the use of Chat-GPT without any, let's say, regulation, any experience of what they are doing it. So I will be really glad to see the answers a little bit. Well, some of the participants are using Compilatio, so it's quite quite good to know. But of course, some paper assessments, changing the type of task. For example, essay is replaced by drawing schemes. So that's quite interesting to really rethink the way of evaluating the students. A plagiarism checker, of course. Some solutions put in the honor code of the institution, so it's quite nice to see also this, a code of ethics, so some trainings, of course, on academic ethics. It's really nice to see it, and of course also in the chat, of course. Well, there are some several things already in places, and it's nice to hear this. Right now we will see a little bit in detail the presentation of Frederic Agnès, which is the CEO of Compilatio. So Frederic, right now, the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Martina. So, sorry. I think that we are hardwired to many things that give struggles in our head. We have good behaviors and we have lazy behaviors, all driven by what we are as humans. For example, we have a part of the brain named the striatum that is a very an old, an ancestral, an archaic one, very central, and it drives our behaviors. For example, by giving us a shoot of dopamine. I don't know what's the right pronunciation, but okay. In several occasions, for example, when you acquire information on your environment, you get a shoot of dopamine. When you identify a danger, you get a shoot of dopamine. When you improve your social position, you get a shoot of dopamine. When you find a way to produce something more efficiently and spending less energy, you have a shoot of dopamine. And this is one, I think, maybe one of the roots that makes that we're always tempted by cheating, because cheating is an easier way to attain an objective. But fortunately, we are balanced. We can add other things to equilibrate, to balance our behaviors in a good way. So let's talk about cheating and about plagiarism. If you look at this definition we often refer to, finally, plagiarism is presenting a text as yours, although it's not yours. And I think it's a short definition, but looking at this, we can consider that copy and pasting is plagiarism, using a ghostwriter is plagiarism, and using a machine ghostwriter is still plagiarism. You are copying something you have not written and saying it's yours. So I think at the very, on the principle level, we are facing the same situation we always have. It's the temptation of producing contents more easily. And a lot of people do it. Just a few words about when we start Compilatio, when we start the service, we thought that teachers will be, teachers, no. We thought that people will be so happy to have a solution to detect cheating. But in fact, focusing on cheating most of the time leads you to manage conflicts and to litigation management. And most of the time, it's not what a teacher wants to spend time on. And we really understood very quickly that it was not about catching cheaters, as Zeenath also said. It's more about creating the conditions for promoting good behaviors, valuable behaviors, to develop skills, to develop values, and school is a good place for that. So we tried to muscle a bit our proposal, and now we are not only proposing a software, we are also trying to accompany, to coach teachers in high schools and universities to create the condition. And for that, there are 3 pillars. Sorry, yeah, thank you very much. The first one is you have to clarify the rules. So it's the regulatory framework. Then you have to develop abilities, training, skills, so people know how to well behave in the authorized area. And then you have to control that everything's fine. And rather than punish, we think it's a good thing to give value to good behaviors. And valorization is also where the software can be used. I mean, it can be used to identify cheaters, but it also can be used to identify non-cheaters. So about the software, we've talked a lot about AI, and at the beginning we were only detecting similarities in text, but we're working on AI since several months, even years, because we wanted not only to detect similarities in the words, but also similarities in the meaning, in the sense. And for that, we have developed AI that we will launch soon that can detect if a text has the same meaning than another, and then to identify this similarity, not only similarity in aspect, but similarity in meaning, including translation, rewarding, and so on. And then ChatGPT appeared. So as we had some knowledge in AI, we tried to put something in place to detect those things. So just a word about how it works. We usually talk about AI as a general thing. There are two main domains in AI, which are machine learning and deep learning. In machine learning, you are providing to a system, to a computer, you are providing data, and you're giving him ideas of things he can do. And the system will find the best way to do the tasks and find the good answer. In deep learning, it's a little bit different. You provide computer data with the good and the wrong answers, and you let him do his experiments, you let him do his try to find the good answer on a task. So considering ChatGPT, in fact, as I think it was Zeenath who said it, in fact, you've already experienced at a lower level what it is. It's about generating phrases, generating sentences in the most predictable and accurate way a human will do, an average human will do, in a context. So it's a bit like auto-completion, but at a very best, at a higher range. ChatGPT is not the first one. We've seen that there were other solutions before, and there will be solutions after. It's just the famous one, the hot trend of the moment, and I'm not underestimating it. It's a big transformation, but I mean, it's not that new. Anyway, it can be detected because it is based on language models, and it's designed to produce predictable text. So basically, that what we can do today in Compilatio, we are putting in place a new system that can detect if a text is written by a human or if it's written by a machine. You can already experience it right now on our website. You put a text and you will have an answer. Is it human or is it AI? And it's very accurate. But what our customers are expecting is something that goes a bit further. What we will propose you is to identify in a text what are the parts that are human and what are the parts that are AI generated. Okay, so it's just the next slide. Another just to identify what the purpose of this slide is. You have to understand that when we detect similarities, we can give you the proof that on one side you have a text and on the other side you have another text, and you can humanly see and read if the similarities are accurate. In our case, we have nothing. In the case of AI generated text, you can't put something to compare in front of your document. It's just about statistics. We have trained an AI to detect if a text was human or AI generated. On the figure, you can see, for example, human is the crosses and AI generated are the circles. And the task of the AI detection system is to draw a line to separate, to find when you place a new text, is it on the human side or the AI side? And as you can see, if the system is under trained, you won't have a satisfying solution. But if it's over-trained, all right, you can also have a solution that is less efficient. So in fact, what we have to find is a model that is statistically the best. But as you can see, in the middle situation, it's only statistics. It means that you always have a few documents that can be just at the limit and that can sometimes be wrongly labeled. The lower, the better. The lower case we have, the better it is. So why I'm telling this is that tools give you measure, but they don't will give you definitive judgment. You always have to evaluate the work your own way. We are just providing information, clues to make the investigation, but it's not a judgment we are providing. It's more an advice, an expert advice. I just wanted to add one last thing. What will be next? Because we've heard Phil talking about integrity and authenticity. And I'm glad of this wording, because we often present anti-plagiarism software as integrity solutions. And I think that authenticity is a more interesting value. As a person, I think that I'm really more interested in promoting authenticity than integrity. Integrity is about following the rules, about understanding the norms, following the norms. Authenticity is more about expressing yourself, everyone with his own world, his own words, sorry, to express himself as you are. So I think authenticity is a value that has to be promoted, and I would be glad that our systems can provide solutions to help schools enhance and promote authenticity. And what I have in mind is that our next step will probably be not to identify the cheating parts, but rather to find solution to certify the authentic one, the one that you can attribute to an author, to each student. And I think it's something that's feasible. We have serious ideas. We're working on this. And I think that in the next month or years, the solution we will be proposing are not only detecting the cheating parts, but validating the original ones. And you'll have to, I hope that this will be an ingredient you can add in designing your training sessions, and that it will be helpful for the teaching community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frederic. Yes, there are some, what we are trying to do is to really simplify the most the life of teachers and in general the academic stuff. So as all of you mentioned before the arrival of AI, it was just plagiarism, put it between brackets. But of course, right now times are changing, and so also the possible way of cheating put in place is by the students. So yeah, we are trying to really keep the food on the track, and to really be helpful for the academic community by providing a solution on a daily basis. There is a question for Frederic from a student from a French university. It was just curious if it will be considered a plagiarism if I use Chat-GPT to correct the French or English language with which the document has been written. So using an AI like Chat-GPT, I think it's also an open question also to Phil and to Zeenath. Do you think that trying to fill the gap, for example, in a language that is not I'm not mother tongue in that language, so I try to take support from an artificial intelligence. Do you think it can be considered a plagiarism or a less plagiarism situation? What are your thoughts?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. I think the first thing is, if you're being asked to write in English, although English is not your first language, that probably is the expectation of the institution that you go to, right? So they are expecting that you should be able to make that translation on your own. You should have that level of understanding and expertise in English to be able to do that subject. That's the first thing. Second thing is, you need to go and find out from your teacher what is their expectation. Do they think you can use a dictionary, for instance? Do they think you can use online translation software? If they say yes, then you've got your permission to use the Chat-GPT to correct your English, since English or French, since these are not your first languages. So again, that's what I would tell you. Now, if the teacher says, no, you're not expected to use it, you should be able to make these translations, and that is what I'm testing, then if you use it, then it's definitely cheating.
Yeah, it retakes exactly what were the thoughts and the advice that we saw during the conference, saying it's really important to, of course, to address the institution, the teachers, and of course to set a list of regulation, of rules in order to really draw a line and say, okay, this is the territory where you can act, where you can practice, where you can be really put yourself in. You must know that between these lines, you have to be. You must be. You must be between these lines. If you go, if you go over, then you must be taking into account that maybe you are addressing not an ethical behavior. Maybe you're doing something wrong. So the most rules, of course, we can give to the audience, to the students, the best way, as you said, Zeenath, we can really draw the cheating line, saying until then you are able, and maybe you are also suggested to do something. For example, like you can use Chat-GPT. After, you have to take consideration of the output that the machine, the tool, gave to you, and you have to make an argument, explain your thoughts, explain your point of view, of course. But yeah, this is the rule. So if you can use it, of course, it's good, and you have to. But if it's not mentioned, then you know that going behind this point, maybe it's a cheating way, a cheating case. So you are informed. After, it's up to you, the decision, but at least you are informed.
Yeah, I just want to also clarify here is the fact that why is your teacher putting in this assessment, right? As a student, I think that's what you need to ask yourself. So if, like I said, you go speak to the teacher, and if the teacher says, no, you should be able to do this on your own, then you need to reflect, why am I not being able to do this on my own? Right? So it's a very internal, it's very internal realization that needs to happen for you. I know we get really bogged down into marks and grades, and I need to pass and I need to do this. All of that is great, but why are you learning? Why are you even trying to get a degree? It's not meant to be just a piece of paper, right? At the end of the day, it's meant to signify that you have learned you have gained some knowledge, and you've picked up some skills. So if writing in English as a part of that English course is a skill that you're expected to have, and the teacher is making it clear that you shouldn't be using ChatGPT, then what it means is, go ahead, you're cheating, that's what you're doing. But again, like I said, depends on the teacher and the course and how the teacher is setting this assessment. They might very well come back and say, I know what your level of English is, I'm okay with you at this stage to be using ChatGPT for translations or helping you with 1 or 2 words. So they might actually give you a very clear guideline or a scope within which you might be allowed to use ChatGPT. So having that open conversation with your teacher is really very, very important. And having that understanding, realization that why am I here? Why am I studying? Because as students now, this is your career. What does that mean that studying is your career? What are you aiming to gain out of that class? If it's just a piece of paper, then obviously it has no value to you or the university. And I'm sure nobody is in a university just for that piece of paper. Thank you.
I'd like to add that having the opportunity to use a technology is not having the obligation to use a technology. I mean, you can improve your English using ChatGPT, but you can also improve your English using other ways. There are other grammar, spelling, and correction available that are not ChatGPT. And anyway, if we think in time, in fact, ChatGPT doesn't produce exactly the same text if it generates text or if it rephrases a human-given text. And this difference maybe will be visible in the future in the system. I mean, I'm not making any promises, but I think it can be possible in the future to detect if it's a generated AI text, fully generated AI text, or if it's a human text rewritten by AI, because the distance to an average and predictable text is different.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can also improve your English by giving your text to read to someone else. Is it cheating or not? I mean, I think we can look at those problems by forgetting that ChatGPT isn't a person. Maybe if we think on the problem, considering that ChatGPT is considered as a third person, and then you ask yourself the question, is it cheating or not? And depending on the cases, the answer will be different.
Of course. Well, thank you, Frederic, for your presentation. I know that the time is almost at the end. There is also a short video of Courtney Cullen from the University of Georgia, United States. She wasn't able to join the session, but she registered a small video to share, of course, her thoughts regarding artificial intelligence in the educational sector. So for the one who already have some plans, some constrictions, it will be really nice to know for us just a word from the conference, from the 2 hours that we spent together today. So feel free to leave it on the chat or maybe send it later by email. It would be very nice for us. In the meantime, I will share anyway the video that Courtney sent to us. I also put it in the chat. Phil, I saw that you need to leave. Thank you very much for your time. It was really interesting to hear from you. Hope to see you again. Zeenath, also thank you very much for your availability. It was great to have you here. So yeah, thank you very much for also letting your contact details if someone has some more questions.
Martina, sorry for interrupting. I have one last thing I forgot, and what a bad promoter of our services am I. About AI and transforming education, we are actually working, we have an example of AI changing education by generative text, but we can also consider other aspects that will be transformed by AI. And I'm thinking about reading. right now at Compilatio, we have another, a little sister company from Compilatio, which is working on AI reading. You can try it on the site submary.com. I'll write it in the chat. And it shows that, okay, text will be written another way in the future, but text will also be read another way in the future. And as with the calculator, you said it, Zeenath, or as the bicycle has changed the way we walk hasn't disappeared. We're just making other things with bicycle than by walking. But we still have those two abilities in different fields. And what we are experiencing right now is that we are redefining the fields, but it's not about disappearing. It's about making some things another way and other things the same old way. And anyway, thank you. Sorry for interrupting. And Martina, I let you go.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Zeenath, again for being with us. It was really a pleasure. I will share right now the video of Courtney. If someone has to go, of course, the registration will be available. And of course, if you can just leave a word from these 2 hours together, will be really nice for us to know also your point of view. So we will see in a few minutes after the video of Courtney.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Courtney Cullen. I'm the Senior Coordinator of the Office of Academic Honesty at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia in the United States. And I'm so sorry that I can't be with you live, but I am really looking forward to connecting with you virtually and maybe when I wake up later on today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides because I am here to talk to you today about integrity is more than just catching cheaters and how we can talk about both academic integrity and especially as it relates to artificial intelligence in our courses. So as we move forward here, I sort of have a 3-prong approach that I want to discuss with you today. The first prong is prevention. We can do this in several ways for faculty, right? We can look at assessment design. So this involves regular assignment creation. I know this is a lot of work for faculty, but once you put an assignment or an assessment out there, it is somewhere on the internet. And so just as you're using assignments, this is something to think about and regularly updating because, you know, some kid has probably already used Chat-GPT or something like it on assignment prompts. And the other part of this is focusing on authentic assessment. So doing assessments that students will find useful later on. What I mean by this is maybe you have an exam, yes, but how are you testing the students? Is it a hands-on exam where you're having them explain a topic to a fellow peer, which is something they'll have to do in the workforce? When we can tie our assessments into students' future careers, they're going to be a little bit more engaged. Another part of your course for prevention is going to be high expectation, high support. What I'm talking about here is the relationship you're building with your students and how you orient your class towards mastery over grades. When you have high expectations that students are going to master the material and you provide the support they need to actually do that, their focus transitions away from getting that A and towards learning. And that's really our goal when we're in the classroom. And part of this, you know, our research shows that when we have students focused on mastery in a classroom, they're less likely to commit academic misconduct. And the very bottom one there is that I just want you to consider practicing some sort of ungrading or alternative grading structure. Again, the goal here is focusing on enabling students to learn and focus on their learning rather than focusing on their outcome. This also gives students autonomy over their coursework and lets students play to their strengths. I don't know about y'all, but if you gave me a set list of differential equations, I would freak out, right? But if you gave me the chance to use a differential equation in the research I'm interested in and explain that to you step by step, I'm going to be a lot more engaged in that coursework and in that process. So these are kind of our 3 things to do for prevention. I'm going to move on to the second prong, which is what I'm going to call advanced persuasion. And so the first part is I want you to discuss academic integrity, and I want you to talk specifically about artificial intelligence writings with your students. So this involves a conversation early and often, before every assignment. When is artificial intelligence appropriate? Is it ever appropriate? If it is, how should they cite their use of artificial intelligence writing? What are we doing here? If they're not allowed to use artificial intelligence writing, let's talk about where they can go instead, right? So let's make them essentially a shortcut between what they can do, what they can't do, and if they can't do something, where they can go instead. We're taking out that question for them. The next thing I want you to talk about with your students is authentic assessment and why you're assigning the assessments in your syllabus. What are you trying to measure from them? The more open and honest we are, and again, this goes back to building that relationship with our students, the more likely that they are to buy into it, right? And when you talk about each assignment that you're setting, you can also talk about the expectations of how they can complete it honestly. And you can ask them, what steps do you need to take to do this work so that it's authentically yours? The other thing I want you to consider doing is announcing what steps you're taking to mitigate it. It's a deterrent strategy. I'm not asking you to actually police your students, but if you are going to use any sort of digital software to detect plagiarism through a text matching software or using an AI detector, let your students know. I want you to be aware that there's some real validity concerns with AI checkers, and it should never be the only, item you're using to see if artificial intelligence writing was used, but it can become a piece of the puzzle. And you can let students know that you're aware, hey, this is an issue that we're facing, and I want the students who do their work honestly to get the grade, and the students who aren't doing their work honestly, they're not. So this is kind of what I mean by advanced persuasion. We're coming at it from 2 separate points of view, both the proactive approach of talking to your students about it, and also the more defensive approach of saying that you're looking for it and you're not going to let it slide in your classwork. And part of this goes into our final, prong of our approach, which is reporting it. So here I want to focus first on your reputation. I want you all to be the instructors that are known for helping students learn, not the instructor that lets everyone cheat. Because you're going to have more respect that way. You're going to find it's easier to build relationships with your students, and that they'll trust you if they hear something is going on, that you're going to take it seriously, and they'll be more likely to come to you there. The next thing I want you to do is to talk about this with your peers. Every department needs to work together to build a culture of integrity, but within every department, every staff member, every faculty member matters. When you all are on the same page and you all are supporting each other, you're sharing ideas, great things can happen. But if you're the only faculty carrying this load, it's going to be really hard. So help build that buy-in there. And then finally, as I said earlier, if you suspect that a student has used artificial intelligence, follow your university process to report it. And you can let students know that you're reporting it. I'm not telling you to disclose a student's identity when you report it, but if you tell students, I'm really disappointed. I found what I suspect is artificial intelligence writing in the assignments, and I've had to report it following the university process. Let's talk about how we can do better in the future. That's going to have a bigger impact than I think a lot of people realize. So I have a couple more slides. The first is just if you want to connect with me, here's my information. You can email me at court13@uga.edu, or you can catch up with me on LinkedIn. I will be posting a couple of discussion questions on my LinkedIn that will go live for you today. So, check it out. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me your opinion. And let's all move forward and learn and grow together. The last thing that I want to leave you with is just here is some resources that might assist you as you're developing your syllabi and the talks that you want to have with your students. I will make sure that these slides are available for you. Again, I'll post them on my LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that I provide them in an email as well. And if you have any questions, if you want to talk about anything that I've gone over today, please feel free to reach out, and I really look forward to connecting with you. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Okay, so that was also the intervention from Courtney, who wasn't able to be with us live, but of course she shared her availability. So feel free also to write to her for any additional maybe comments or thoughts or anything that you want to share, because as we saw today, it's really important sharing the knowledge and sharing the context we are facing. And yes, we come to the end of this conference. Even if some more minutes were took, it was really nice to have you all here. Thank you very much for the experts who were together with us today, because your interesting presentations I think were really appreciated by the audience, both also from us. And it was really nice to see some tips and your experience regarding how we can see artificial intelligence in a positive way, and of course in an educational way. So thank you very much again. For every participant who is still connected, we will be glad to hear some of your thoughts regarding this talk. So feel free to write a word in the chat, or also in the on the poll that you will find at the end of the session here. Thank you very much. It's been quite a really interesting morning, an interesting talk. If you have any questions regarding, of course, the conference, the replay will be shared with you in the following days. So thank you very much, and hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Martina. Thank you, Frederic.
Thank you very much,
everyone.
Zeenath. Have a
Thanks, everyone.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.